Why do some people thrive where others break? Why do some move through life with clarity while others stumble in the dark? We will explain 6 habits of intelligent people. It's not luck, it's not fate, it's their attitude, it's the way they think, the way they see, the way they react. Intelligence isn't just about knowing facts or solving equations. It's about understanding the world in ways most people miss. Real intelligence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It shows in the way a person handles failure, how they adapt, how they observe, how they carry themselves when no one is watching. It is not arrogance, but awareness. It is the ability to laugh at chaos instead of being consumed by it. It is the strength to be alone without feeling lost. It is the discipline to question, to notice, to act instead of complain. Most people live on the surface, reacting, assuming, never questioning the deeper patterns beneath their own behavior. But those who think differently, those who see differently, hold an advantage. They know that humor isn't just about jokes, but about resilience. They understand that solitude isn't loneliness, but self-mastery. They embrace discomfort because they know growth never comes from comfort. This is not about being superior. It is about being aware of yourself, of others, of the patterns that shape your life. If you've ever felt that the world moves in predictable loops, that most people follow without thinking, that intelligence is not about being the loudest, but about seeing what others ignore, then you are already on the path. So the question is, are you willing to see the world differently? Let's discuss them. 1. Do you talk to yourself, or do you fear the echo? Have you ever caught yourself whispering your thoughts out loud, embarrassed, thinking it made you seem strange? Society has painted this as odd, maybe even a sign of madness. But what if the opposite were true? What if the voice in your head was sharpening your mind, making you see the world with more clarity? Internal dialogue is not just chatter, it is structure, a way to shape raw thought into something meaningful. Those who engage in self-talk, whether out loud or internally, are simply organizing the chaos of their mind. They question, they argue, they refine their reasoning. Studies suggest that verbalizing thoughts enhances problem-solving skills and memory retention. When you speak a thought aloud, it becomes tangible, easier to analyze and break apart. You are not lost in a whirlwind of ideas. You are dissecting them. Psychologists Lev Vygotsky and recent cognitive studies have linked inner speech to self-regulation and cognitive control. Athletes, chess masters, and scientists all do it. It's not just a sign of intelligence, it's a tool that intelligent people use. Yet the world sees it differently. We are taught to silence ourselves, to fear the echo. But why? True self-reflection is uncomfortable. The mind, when left alone, does not always whisper comforting words. It brings forth doubts, fears, and harsh truths. Many avoid their own thoughts, drowning them out with distractions, afraid of what silence might reveal. But the Stoic does not flinch. To face oneself honestly is to gain power over the self. The undisciplined man runs from his own voice. The wise man listens, questions, and corrects. So, do you speak to yourself, or do you silence the one person who truly understands you? Challenge yourself, argue with yourself, motivate yourself. Force not to overthink, force your mind to sharpen. The world may call it strange, but wisdom has never belonged to the crowd. 2. Have you ever laughed when you should have cried? Imagine this. You're running late for an important appointment. You rush to catch the bus, only to see it pulling away just as you reach the stop. Frustration builds in your chest. Then, out of nowhere, it starts raining. No umbrella, no jacket, just you, standing there drenched, watching the bus disappear into the distance. What do? Curse the world? Blame bad luck? Or do you shake your head, let out a breath, and laugh at the absurdity of it all? Humor is not just about jokes and laughter. It is a tool for survival, a way to outmaneuver despair. A sharp mind understands that suffering is inevitable. Problems will come, people will betray, plans will collapse. But the difference between the broken and the unbreakable is how they choose to respond. Those who can laugh, even in hardship, hold power over their own emotions. They refuse to let circumstances dictate their state of mind. Psychologists have studied this extensively. A 2016 study in behavioral research and therapy found that individuals who use humor to cope with stress experience lower levels of anxiety and depression. The brain releases dopamine and serotonin when we laugh, chemicals that counteract stress and sharpen cognitive function. But humor is not just an escape, it is a reframing tool. When you can see life's cruelty as irony instead of tragedy, you rob it of its ability to wound you. But most people resist this. They believe that to suffer visibly is to be taken seriously. They think laughter in dark times is denial, weakness. But what they fail to see is that humor is not avoidance, it is confrontation. It is looking misfortune in the eye and saying, "You do not own me." The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that life would test him, that people would fail him, that pain was unavoidable. The wise man prepares for it, not with self-pity, but with acceptance, and sometimes with a smirk. So ask yourself, when life mocks you, do you take the insult to heart or do you laugh along, knowing that you will always have the final word? 3. Do you fear being alone, or do you fear facing yourself? Picture this. You're sitting in a quiet room, no phone, no distractions, just silence. Minutes pass, then an hour. Your mind starts to wander. Regrets, worries, unfinished conversations, old embarrassments, they all surface. Do you welcome them? Or do you reach for the nearest distraction, afraid of what your own mind might say? Most people dread solitude, not because they dislike being alone, but because they dislike being alone with themselves. They keep their minds occupied not with thought, but with noise, constant scrolling, meaningless conversations, shallow entertainment. It is not connection they seek, but escape. And yet, the sharpest minds, the greatest thinkers, all knew the value of solitude. It is in silence that true understanding begins. Psychologists have studied this avoidance of solitude. A 2014 study in Science found that most people would rather administer small electric shocks to themselves than sit in a room alone with their thoughts. This is not just impatience, it is fear. Fear of self-examination, fear of past failures resurfacing, fear of realizing how little control they truly have over their own minds. But those who seek wisdom do not run from themselves. They turn inward, question, reflect. They sharpen their thoughts the way a warrior sharpens a blade. Stoicism teaches that solitude is not isolation, but preparation. Seneca wrote of the importance of withdrawing into oneself, not as an escape from the world, but as a way to return stronger, more disciplined, more aware. The man who cannot be alone is a man who is always at the mercy of others. He relies on their opinions, their validation, their presence to feel at ease. But the one who is comfortable in solitude, he is unshaken. His peace is not borrowed, it is built from within. So, ask yourself, when you are alone, do you see it as an opportunity to understand yourself? Or do you panic, desperate to drown out the silence? Because in the end, the one who cannot face himself will always be running, and no amount of company will ever be enough to fill that void. 4. Do you seek truth or just comfort? Imagine this. You're in a discussion and someone challenges your beliefs. Not with insults, but with reason, logic, and facts that don't fit what you've always assumed to be true. Do you listen? Do you entertain the idea even if it unsettles you? Or do you dismiss it immediately, protecting what you already believe? Most people mistake intelligence for certainty. They think the smartest minds are the ones who know the most, who hold firm, unwavering beliefs. But real intelligence is not stubbornness. It is openness. It is the ability to entertain new ideas, even uncomfortable ones. It is the willingness to be wrong in order to grow. Yet this is where most fail. Cognitive psychology has a term for it: confirmation bias. It's the tendency to seek out and favor information that supports what we already believe, while ignoring anything that contradicts it. Study by Charles Lord, Lee Ross, and Mark Lepper showed that people given the same set of mixed evidence on the death penalty became more convinced of their original stance, whether for or against, because they only paid attention to the details that fit their view. Intelligence does not make one immune to this. In fact, Highly intelligent people can be even better at rationalizing their own biases. What separates the truly wise? The ability to doubt. Socrates himself claimed to know nothing, not because he was ignorant, but because he understood that knowledge is never static. Stoicism echoes the same truth. Our perception is flawed, our understanding limited. To cling to certainty is to stop growing, and yet most people would rather be comfortable in ignorance than uncomfortable in truth. They fear being wrong because their identity is built on their beliefs, not on their ability to adapt. Ask yourself, do you truly seek wisdom, or do you just want to be right? When faced with new information, do you defend your beliefs like a fortress, or do you test them like a scientist? Because those who refuse to change, who fear the collapse of their old views, are not holding on to truth, they are holding on to chains. 5. Do you see what others ignore? You walk into a crowded room, people talk, laugh, move about. But what do you notice first? The expressions on their faces? The tension in their shoulders? The way someone's smile doesn't quite reach their eyes? Or do you see only what's obvious, missing everything unspoken? Most people look, but few truly see. They move through life on autopilot, catching only what's loud, what's direct, what demands their attention. But those with sharp minds, those who truly understand the world, notice the details, the hesitation before a lie, the fatigue hidden behind a forced grin, the way the wind shifts before a storm. Observation is not just about sight, it is about awareness, about seeing the patterns others ignore. Psychologists call this selective attention. The brain naturally filters out what it deems unimportant, allowing us to focus on what seems most relevant. But intelligence is the ability to widen that filter, to take in more than just the obvious. By Simons and Chabris, the famous invisible gorilla experiment showed how people can miss even something as absurd as a man in a gorilla suit walking through a basketball game, simply because they weren't looking for it. What else do we fail to see in our own lives? The Stoics understood this well. Seneca taught that most suffering comes not from events themselves, but from failing to perceive them correctly. A fool is caught off guard by betrayal because he ignored the signs. A wise man sees it coming long before the knife is in his back. A fool believes in words, a wise man watches actions. This is not paranoia, it is clarity. The ability to see, truly see, is not just about survival, it is about control. Because the one who notices more understands more, and the one who understands more is not easily deceived. So ask yourself, do you pay attention to the world around you, or do you only see what is placed in front of you? Because those who fail to observe are not living, they are sleepwalking, blind to the truth unfolding right before their eyes. 6. Do you build or do you complain? You face a problem, a real one. Maybe it's a financial setback, a failed relationship, or a plan that collapsed right before your eyes. What's your first instinct? Do you dwell on the unfairness of it all, recounting every misfortune that led you here? Or do you take a breath, steady yourself, and ask, what can I do next? Most people waste their energy on complaints. They replay their suffering like a broken record, searching for someone to blame. Society, fate, bad luck. But here's the truth. Complaining is a dead end. It changes nothing. It solves nothing. It only weakens the mind, making problems seem bigger and solutions further away. Those with sharp minds understand this. They do not spend time wishing things were different. They spend time making things different. Psychology has a term for this: locus of control. A study by Julian Rotter showed that people fall into two groups. Those with an external locus of control, who believe life happens to them, and those with an internal locus of control, who believe they have power over their circumstances. The second group, those who focus on what they can do, tend to be more successful, more resilient, and less likely to crumble under stress. The Stoics lived by this truth centuries before modern psychology confirmed it. They did not dwell on what they couldn't control. They focused only on action, on solutions, on forward movement. This is not about blind optimism. Life is unfair. Plans will fail. People will disappoint you. But what comes next? That is the only question that matters. The weak sit in the ashes of what they lost. The strong gather what remains and build again. When life breaks something in your hands, do you stare at the pieces, mourning what's gone? Or do you start putting them back together, creating something new? Because the ones who act, who move, who refuse to be paralyzed by complaint, those are the ones who shape the world instead of being shaped by it. Thanks for watching.